Wonderful. So it's exactly 5:35. I'm calling this meeting to order. Stephanie or Guadalupe, either one, can you guys do the roll call, please?
Yes. All right. Steve Bischoff,
Here.
Helen Burks, looks like is absent. Marisol Cantu,
Here.
Eddie Chacon,
I'm here. I have my video off because I'm eating, by the way, but I'll turn it on soon.
thank you. Luis Chacon,
Here.
Don Gosney.
Here.
Randy Joseph. Which
I am here.
Okay, thank you. Kristen Killian Lobos,
I'm here.
Armand Lee seems to be absent.
Oh, he sent me a message, which you should get a copy of too, Stephanie, saying that he had an emergency and wasn't going to be able to make it tonight.
Okay, I'll note that down.
Sorry.
No worries. Okay, Laura Mangles, I do believe also may have sent in a message as well. All right, Marcus Endesang is absent. Joey Schlemmer.
Here.
Thank you. Deborah Small.
Present.
Ben Terrio. Absent. Tamisha Walker.
Present.
Linda Whitmore is absent. And BK Williams.
Here.
All right, thank you.
And I see Helen Burks just joined us.
Oh, okay, perfect. Thank you. I'll mark her as present.
Good evening.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you, Guadalupe. So does anyone have any suggestions or requests vis-a-vis the agenda?
I don't.
If there are no objections, then I'm going to say that we're going to adopt the agenda as is. I believe we don't need to take a vote on that, LaShonda.
Right.
So I'm
is
going to give
correct.
people 25 more seconds to register an objection. If you have one, speak now, or we're going as is.
Yeah, I'll make a request.
Yes, Joey?
Lieutenant Lopez, I believe, has worked all day. He can verify that. And then with that being said, I'd like to recommend that number 4 be moved up to number 1.
I won't agree to that, but I'm open to having it be number 2 or number 3. Because I had a request for number 1 to be number 1.
Okay, let's make it number 2.
I'm okay with that. Is the rest of the group okay with that?
Yep.
All right, so then the agenda is adopted with that revision that item number 4 will now be item number 2. Great. So let's move forward with the review of meeting procedures.
All right. Okay, I will now read announcement to the public. Anyone may make an oral comment, even if a written comment has been previously submitted. However, each speaker may raise their hand once to make one oral public comment per agenda item. We will hold public comment very shortly after item F, City Staff Liaison Reports. So if you would like to speak during public comment, please raise your hand now. To comment by video conference, click on the participants button at the bottom of your screen and select the raise your hand button. To comment by phone, you will be prompted to raise your hand by pressing *9. For agenda items under item H, presentations, discussions, and action items, you may use the raise my hand feature to express your interest in providing comment for each agenda item. An announcement will be made when it is time for public comment.
Thank you, Guadalupe. So next item is approving the minutes of the October 26th regular meeting. Have people had a chance to review the minutes? I know I did. I didn't have a problem. Does anyone have any suggested changes or revisions to the minutes as submitted? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adopt them.
Steve, I would like to make a motion.
I'll second
Thank you,
that.
Steve. Thank you, Helen. So the motion has been made and seconded to adopt the minutes of the last meeting on October 26th. Is there any discussion of the motion?
Yeah, I got a comment.
Okay, Joey, go ahead.
Yeah, under the agenda item that we were dealing with the homelessness update. I see that staff was good enough to talk about how I think Luis Chacon spoke about how knowledgeable Don Gosney was, and maybe he should have some comments or some recommendations. What I find missing was the discussion that talked about some of the folks potentially leaving recently dismantled homeless encampment in Berkeley and moving to Richmond. So my point is, I don't care one way or the other whether it's included or not, but if staff is going to take the time to make put that in the minutes, I think that those other comments are probably just probably a little bit more important to the discussion.
So are you making a motion to revise the minutes or not?
Yes, I am.
Are you making a request for them to be revised?
Yes, I am.
Do we have to vote on that, LaShonda?
Yes, my understanding is you do. There needs to be a motion. Allison can correct me if I'm wrong. But you may want to say accept the minutes with the revision to, item G. I don't know what item it is on here right now, to add
Can you
in
scroll
X,
up
Y,
so
and Z.
we can see what we're talking about?
Yeah, but I think you need to specify how you want to, in your motion, how you would like to amend the minutes.
Yeah, I'm not clear exactly what's being
Allison,
requested.
is that correct? That a motion needs to be made with clear direction about how the minutes should be amended?
Yes,
And
that's
voted
my-
on?
Right, that's my understanding as well.
Yeah. So I don't have the exact specifics. I can just tell you that there was a discussion or a question that I
So,
raised. Can I
Joey,
finish?
okay,
Can I
go
finish?
ahead.
So I don't know the specifics about what was actually discussed. There was a question that I raised with Mr. Sanchez about some folks not being from Richmond, living in homeless encampments in Richmond, and he made a comment pertaining to one, I believe, up in the Hilltop area, where he suspected that those folks moved from recently dismantled encampment in Berkeley and had moved up to Hilltop. So I don't care one way or the other. If you guys want, if I need specifics, then obviously then we'll just move on. But
So
I'm
my
just,
request is that I'm looking at the minutes now. Can you keep scrolling up a little? It's item 8.6. I can only see part of it on the screen right now. Okay, so again, Joey, if you're making a motion to amend the minutes, my request is that you make it to the specific agenda item that you want to be amended and be clear about what the request is that you're making, because we have to vote on it. And so in order to vote on it, we have to be clear about what it is that you're talking about. Now, the minutes are here. I'm assuming that you reviewed them before you raised this objection.
yeah. And what I'm saying is what's missing is that information. And since I don't have the specifics, we can just move on and vote on the minutes as.
All right, but the specifics are included in the video and the transcript that are also available on the website.
Okay, and I So what do you want me to do at this point, Deborah? I just told you I don't have those
So my
specifics.
only point is that, and this is not just to you, this is to the people as the group as a whole, that we're given in advance the agenda with the minutes and the links to the video and the written transcript of the actual meeting. So to the extent that people have objections to the minutes as they've been recorded, my request is that people come prepared to say, one, what they're objecting to, and two, what is it from the actual meeting that was missing that they want to have included based on the record that's available. That's
Okay.
my request, okay?
Okay,
And
I
I
understand. I understand, and since I don't have those specifics, then I'm just making a comment that I'm hoping will be in next month's minutes. That staff do a better job at documenting some relevant information rather than some other comments about Don Gosney's knowledge about the homeless encampments. That's all I'm saying.
I see your hand, Helen.
I'll pause it here. It seems like I was going to discuss if a motion was made for that, but I'll save my
Luis,
comment.
I see your hand is up.
Yeah, I just wanted to know that my comment is as a public comment, and so are other folks who's as public comment. So it wasn't like I say anything necessarily as a force member, but rather as for the public. And maybe that's what we need clarification on, what gets put in the minutes in terms of what the public says during the comment period and what is said in the meeting by task force members.
Well,
so maybe we
it
need some
was
guidance on that
listed
moving
as
forward.
it was listed as being a public comment in the minutes. Helen, do you have anything else you want to say? If not, I'd like to we still have a motion that was made and seconded to approve the minutes. So unless there's further discussion, I'd like to actually call a vote on that motion. Oh, Don, I see your hand. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm just looking for a little clarification. You mentioned several times that there are transcripts for our meetings. And I'm not seeing those on the website. I'm sure I'm not looking in the right place, but for our edification, perhaps you can tell us where on the website that there are transcripts.
So that's a better question to direct at staff. I thought I saw in the minutes or in the packet, there was a link to an audio link, video link, I thought, and something else, Guadalupe, but if I'm mistaken about that, please correct me.
If I'm not mistaken, I believe we have a link for individuals to watch the recording of the meeting. We do not have transcription minutes from the meeting. That is not what staff.
Thank you, I stand corrected. I just knew that there was a link in the minutes and in the agenda packet to the actual recording of the meeting. So I'm sorry that I thought that also included the transcript. Don, I see your hand is up.
No, I'm sorry. No, I just want to thank you for the clarification. I didn't see the transcripts, but I'll stop looking since staff is telling me they don't actually exist.
Is there any further discussion of the motion around the minutes from the October meeting? If not, I'd like to call the question.
All right. Helen Burks,
Yes.
Steve Bischoff,
Yes.
Marisol Cantu,
Yes.
Eric Chacon,
Yes.
Luis Chacon,
Yes.
Don Gosney,
Yes.
Randy Joseph,
Yes.
Kristen Killian Lobos,
Yes.
Marcus Engesing, believe he's here. Marcus, are you here?
I see him, but I'm not sure why he can't.
Okay, I'll
vote, so.
Joey Schlemmer,
No.
Deborah Small,
Yes,
Tamisha Walker,
Aye.
BK Williams,
Yes.
and then Marcus Injasing.
Yes, I'm sorry, I'm having extreme connectivity issues.
So the motion passes unanimously. Or sorry, not
no.
with one
There
no.
was no no.
Apologies. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Guadalupe. The next item on the agenda is city staff report.
Due to time, I do not have a report unless Allison or Lupe or other staff have any updates they would like to make. I do not have any tonight.
For me, I guess a quick one, I guess maybe kind of writing on the previous conversation. We did finally hire a transcriber for the meeting minutes. So I think probably these meeting minutes moving forward, they'll be a lot more detailed and they'll be able to capture all the conversations. So I think that'll help reflect a lot more of what goes on in our meetings. So
Guadalupe, just offering, I've learned that there's a way that you can take your audio recording from Zoom and through Word produce a transcript of everything. So we can talk offline. I'll show you how to do it. It'll save you guys a lot of time.
Yeah, sounds good. Cool. Thank you.
Don Gosney, your hand is up.
Yes, thank you. I use a transcription service called rev.com, R-E-V. We're working through the city manager's, the mayor's office on that as well for the city council minutes, but they're extremely accurate. They're $1.50 a minute, it's quick and easy. Again, very accurate. And so it's just something to consider. Because a lot of the transcription services, especially the ones through YouTube, are really bad.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll keep that in mind. I know the Zoom one doesn't I feel like it doesn't transcribe things, so sentences are really kind of off. But I'll keep that in mind for sure. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I just highly recommend it. I've been using it for years, and it's very, very happy with them. rev.com.
Keep that in mind. Thank you.
Okay, so now that means the next item on our agenda is public comments.
If anyone has public comment tonight on an item that is not on the agenda, please raise your hand now so that we can call on you. You will have 2 minutes. If you're on the phone, you can press *9. Right now, I only see one hand, and that's Randy Joseph. So we can get the clock up before you get started. Thank you. Randy, you have 2 minutes.
Again, sorry for not being on camera due to me having this migraine, but I wanted to make a public comment to say that work on this task force it's been a lot of work, but I think make sure that we continue to go forward. And I wanted to bring to attention as something that might bring a brick hole that might need to be brought to the attention of this task force. And it's the fact that if a young person who was 16 years old was on the street today and was looking for shelter, there wouldn't be a program out there to really support them. That the fact that youth are on the street and are homeless is a big mistake in this city. And then we need to put some focus to making sure that young people are not on the street and are being housed, they're being taken care of, and making sure there are services available for these young people to thrive. Working at the Rise Center, working through different youth groups, I've seen way too many young people been lost in the stray because there's not enough services in their city to support them. And we need to continue to push forward to make sure that these services happen in this city. They continue to go on in this city. That's it. I yield my time.
Okay, we have Helen Burks next. Helen, you have 2 minutes to speak. You can start now.
Hello, everyone. In a similar vein to Randy's comment, I wanted to extend an invitation for everyone as an opportunity to support some of our youth and families, specifically those of King Elementary School. We are accepting donations of clothing or lightly used clothing. In particular, there's a need for jackets, scarves, warm clothing, gloves as the weather gets colder. Students this morning started the day pointing out the ice on the roof. And there is a very large need, and families are expressing desire to fill that. So we have a closet of donations, and we would love your support in helping to fill it. If you have any questions, you can reach out to my email address for the district, which is hburks@wccusd.net. You can also bring donations to the front office at King Elementary, which is at 4022 Florida Avenue, right next to MLK Park. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. And that was our last public speaker.
Great. Randy and Helen, your hands are still up. I'm assuming that was from before. Okay, just checking. Okay, next item on the agenda is presentation, discussion, and action items. First item is to review, discuss, and approve the task force working group structure and membership. I was asked to move this up because we've had this item on the agenda for several meetings and haven't really been able to have a substantive discussion. And actually, if you look at the background memo prepared for us, the last time we actually discussed this in depth was in April of this year. So a request for people, if you haven't already, to review the material that was prepared by city staff that's in your agenda packet. It comes right after the minutes from the last meeting that discusses the previous working group structure that we had, and then the proposed structure that we discussed in April, which is where I would like to pick up our discussion tonight. I can review that for folks just so everyone is up to speed. Our original working group structure that we had from the 2020 to 2021 year was smart budget and resource allocation that focused on budgetary and other issues related to how we wanted to fund the various proposals. Accountability and safety that focused on the Richmond Police Department staffing, training, and basic processes for departmental accountability. Health and safety that focused on mental and behavioral health, substance abuse, and homelessness, with an emphasis on public health oriented approaches that would be alternatives to traditional policing responses. Community-based solutions, which was focused on alternatives to policing for common problems, mutual aid, housing counseling, immigration support, etc. And then the implementation working group, which was focusing on implementing the 4 intervention programs that were proposed and adopted by the City Council. Based on our previous discussion and recommendations that we talked about back in April during our special task force meeting, we talked about revamping the working groups. This was after we stopped having the implementation subcommittee when we found out that it would have to be Brown Act compliant in order to meet on a regular basis. And we decided to go back to our original working group structure. And so the working groups that were proposed for moving forward for a time frame, which this 6 months means nothing now really, because it was 6 months ago when we had the conversation. But we can discuss whether or not, but I think still the working group should be limited in their time frame for how long they're going to move forward, and we can always come back and look at them again at the end of that time frame. But the proposal for the existing groups moving forward would be to have one that was called community investment that would be accountable for implementing and looking at initiatives related to youth works and O&S. Helen had agreed to be the point person, and other members who expressed interest were Luis Chacon and Marcus Indesay. The second working group would be police practices and accountability, which would kind of pick up on the work that had been previously done by accountability and safety. And that would be focused on implementing the task force initiatives related to the RPD. And the members for that working group would be Joey Schlemmer, Linda Whitmore, Ben Terrio, and myself, and anyone else who's interested in being on that working group. The third one was health and safety, which would be accountable for implementing the CCRP program. Kristen Killian Lobos agreed to be point person, and BK and Laura Mangles expressed interest in that working group. And then the fourth group that we talked about was community-based solutions, which would be looking at implementation of the unhoused intervention programs. Randy Joseph agreed to serve as point person, and other people who expressed interest were Eddie, Tamisha Torres Walker, and Armand Lee. So none of this is, I mean, this is the discussion we had in April. People may have changed their interests from then to now. So this is a summary of where we were. It doesn't have to dictate what we do moving forward. I do think that the 4 groups that we had talked about in April are still relevant right now. But if people have a different suggestion, please bring it.
Chair Small, I just want to raise one point, and it might just be the wording in the staff report, that these types of working groups are advisory only. They'd have to
Yes.
come back to the full task
Yes.
force. Okay, I just want to make sure that's
Yes. Yes, no, the main goal of the working group was to enable task force members to be able to meet and deal with the more granular aspects of things and make recommendations to the entire task force about how we should move forward on specific proposals. So
Okay.
yes, it's advisory.
okay.
So discussion. I can't see people's hands because I've got the document on my screen.
I don't see any hands up at the moment,
Oh.
unless I'm mistaken. Oh, now I do. Helen
Okay,
and Steve have their hands up.
My statement
Okay.
is just that I'm good with the current outline, and I'm still up for the role I signed up for back then. So it's just confirming.
wonderful. Thank you, Helen. Oh, love to hear that. So, I mean, let's start with this. Let's start with the structure as we just discussed, those 4 working groups. Are people still in agreement that those 4 working groups make sense moving forward? And if so, let's kind of agree on that, and then we can go back to look at how they're going to be populated.
Chair Small, I see Steve, Randy, and Marisol's hands up.
Is there some way you can change the screen so I can actually see people? Great, thank you very much. Okay, so who did you see? Okay, I see Steve, Randy. I can't see Marisol. Okay, in that order. Go ahead.
Okay, I just wanted to suggest we have a freshly written version of what you said. What you said makes sense to me. And the other thing is in terms of being attached to one of the working groups, because I would really like to be on the one that looks at CCRP, for example.
I was hoping you would say that. And if you look in the memo, it's a pretty accurate summary. We can update it for the next meeting, but I think it's a pretty accurate summary of what we envisioned each of those working groups to do. Randy, you're next.
Yes, looking at my question is if we're doing this, is it staying at the same programs, or are we using these advisories to look into different things? Because I'll be glad to say for like community-based solutions, but looking and starting to do research on other things that we may need to look into, like what I stated earlier.
So again, it's not limited in that way. I mean, one of the ideas behind the restructuring was to make sure that we had a working group that was going to be accountable for implementing each of the major proposals. But that doesn't mean that you're not able to look at other things. And in fact, I have a suggestion about what the community investment should do around youth. That, I'm not on that group, but I wanted to make that recommendation that I'm hoping that the group will decide to explore further. So yes, it's addressing and focusing on the programs that have already been approved, but also looking at any additional initiatives that you want to bring back to the task force to consider.
Okay, since that's the case, I'll gladly stay where I'm at and supporting that cause, because I think what community-based solution is vague. Like, I think it's not vague, but it's like it has some of the stuff that I want to bring to the attention and do some research, and I've already started on my own and bring to the attention to start doing that. So I'll leave that there.
Are you still willing to be the point person for that working group?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Maddie Sol.
Hi, thank you, Chair Small. I understand the 4. We did have the smart budget reallocation at one time, and I would like to continue that as we push new initiatives and policies, programs. If there's a budgetary aspect, I think that we should still have a group, and I can cross-pollinate with other groups based on budgets that they come up with in the near future.
So I'm not necessarily opposed to that. One of the reasons that we didn't recommend a separate budget group was because when we had the discussion in April, there was a sense that each of the working groups needed to be paying more attention to the budgets for the programs that they were focused on implementing, and that somehow having a separate budget committee was sort of not having people do that. So I can see the value of having a budget committee, but I also want to make sure that it's not done in a way that doesn't have the working groups actually take on budget accountability. Because if people aren't watching and managing how the money is being spent, that's a big part of what implementation is about.
Can I respond?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, I understand looking at the previous budgets. I would also be interested in, that's why I mentioned cross-pollinating with all working groups to be able to communicate with them so that it's not done in a silo and that we're coming together and people are working and looking at the budget collectively. In particular, looking at where in the future we make a recommendation that has a budgetary aspect that we need to find funds from our PD budget. I think that research takes a lot when other groups might be looking as a program or at a different initiative. I just want to make sure, if you oppose it, I won't do it. But
No. I'm not in opposition to the idea of having a budget committee. I just want to make sure that we're doing it in a way that doesn't have the other working groups not to pay attention to budgetary issues.
Can I work on that with you then to make sure that does not happen?
Absolutely. And if you want to do a separate budget committee, I'm fine with that too. It just is like, there's been a bit of a disconnect in terms of program implementation between the budgetary aspect of it and the other programmatic aspects of it. And so the idea was to just make sure that each of the working groups held within their accountability a budgetary accountability. Luis, I'm sorry, Mighty Soul, before I go on to Luis, is there anything else that you wanted to say on that topic?
It seems like there is not another budget committee right now, so I'll wait.
No. Do you want to propose that we have one?
That's what I was proposing. I was proposing.
Cool. All right, so that's out there, and we'll see who else is open to wanting to work on that with you. I don't want you to hear me as saying like I'm a no, because I'm not. Luis, I see your hand.
Just on that topic, I think what was helpful last time we made recommendations was having a central committee that we could take any budgetary sort of questions or proposals to. Just because at least for some of us in the other working groups, I think we were able to think about like how much certain things might cost, or like little budget things, but we weren't as we either didn't have the time or the expertise to be able to do more work around that. So I know that was really helpful for our group, or the groups I was in last time.
So let me make a suggestion, and Marisol, you can let me know if this works for you. My suggestion is that one person from each subgroup work with you on budget. That's each working group, pick a person who's going to work with you to look at the budgetary aspect of the work that they're doing, so that we make sure that there's interaction between the budget work that's being done and the working groups.
If that works for other people, yes.
It's just a suggestion. I'm open to doing it in a different way too. And Helen, I see your hand. Is that up for this conversation?
No, apparently I'm doing a poor job of lowering it. I apologize.
No, it's okay. I just don't want to overlook you. Randy, same question.
Yeah, no, mine was to this.
Okay,
Yeah,
go ahead.
I hear what Soul's saying, and I think it'd be helpful, I think, to have like the heads of each, or like the people that are leading that, to meet together to have a budget conversation to make sure that things are going together. So we're all on the same page, and it's not like, we come for this, all the work that we've done, and then the budget team has to wait another month before they can really get into it. And then that just, I think that I don't want to say speeds us up, but I think it keeps people on the same timeline, and it keeps people focused, and keep people on the same page to know what each other are doing. And it's not just the budget people find out what's going on at this meeting, or like it's more of a conversation with individuals. I think that will help it streamline it if that's Brown Act compliant. I want to make sure that we're not going against that, but I would be down for that if that's what Soul was trying to say. If not, please help me by clarifying.
And Tamisha, I saw your hand up and then it went down.
Oh, my hand was up in regards to Randy's recommendation about, the leaders in each of those groups meeting, and I just needed clarification around, Brown Act compliance, and he raised it, so I lowered my hand.
Okay, cool. And my only, how can I put it? It's not a caveat. My only adjustment to Randy's recommendation is that I don't necessarily want the person who agreed to be the point person to have to do the budgetary thing if they don't want it to do it, which is why I'm saying one person from each working group, and the group can decide who that person would be. But I think the point is basically the same.
I agree to that. Yeah, I was just saying it as just a point of the matter. It could be anybody from the group that had knowledge and information.
Marisol, does that work for you in terms of what you are concerned about? Does that respond? Is that responsive?
Sure, absolutely.
So we know based on the conversation that we had today, who the point people are for each of these groups. Helen, are you open to working with Marisol on budget? And same for Kristen, who agreed to be the point person for health and safety.
I'm open to it, but I think it'd also be good for us as a group to meet just to see if anyone else has that interest. So we can, I think it's like you said, we can discuss at our first meeting to solidify.
Okay.
But until we have that discussion, I'll stay in the loop.
Okay, great. Thank you. Joey, I see your hand.
Yeah, so I just wanted clarification on something that Marisol said. So the purpose of a budget committee would be to identify funds to cover some of the things that we're making recommendations on, and that money is going to be coming from where?
I think that's to be discussed.
So it would be coming from the city budget as a whole?
To me, that's the point of having a budget committee or a group of people looking at the budget to discuss where would be the best places to make recommendations that additional requests of funding should come from. Understanding that ultimately the decision is up to city council. So all we would be doing is making recommendations based on a budget analysis that we would be doing, similar to what we did before.
Okay, I think it would be smart to have somebody from some city staff to be on that budget committee, don't you think?
Well, there's nothing that we do in terms of making recommendations that doesn't go through city staff at some point. Even for it to come up at the task force meeting requires interaction with city staff about it. But what I don't want to do is add to their work burden by creating one more meeting that they have to go to. I think it would be up to the group itself to determine what input and with city staff was needed in terms of whether they wanted a staff person at that meeting, if the city thought that was necessary. I don't want us to make that call.
Okay.
I just want to add in that it can only be members of the actual governing body that's part of these working groups. Staff can join meetings sometimes, but they couldn't be an actual member of the working groups.
Thank you,
Okay.
Allison. I am muted at the same time. Just to make it clear, staff is happy to attend if we are able, but having a staff person available is not feasible at all.
Okay. I'm just trying to avoid, putting forward proposals that are going to be unrealistic financially.
I understand, and part of what Chair Small is saying, that when we work on the agenda reports that come to the full body, we're working together, and all the staff reports are coming from city staff. And so I think that is where that connection will be, that nexus. And then also the task force is an advisory body. So just say the task force made a recommendation for some budget allocation, the staff report more than likely will come from city staff. And that's where city staff can work and say, this is feasible, this is not, this is what the task force recommended. City staff's recommendation is this based on our knowledge of budgets and department needs and city resources. So I think we'll definitely be able to tie those two together.
Thank you, LaShonda.
Okay,
Now,
thank you.
I saw your hand. Was there something else you wanted to add? You're good. All right. So, wow, I can't believe it. We actually got through this conversation on the agenda. So, do we need to take a motion? Yeah, this is an action.
You do.
Item.
It is an action
So we
item.
need
It
to
says
take
approve. Yep, the working group structure.
So can we approve the working group structure? I entertain a motion to approve the working group structure as we've discussed it today, with the staffing that we've discussed today. And if there's anyone present at the meeting today who is not already on a working group that would like to be on a working group, can you say so today? And if not, it can always be available to change at a future meeting. Don got me.
Staff, before Don, real quick, staff, can you bring up that portion of the staff report just so people can see what it is they're voting on, the structure that was included?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I've got it on my other screen, so I'm reading it at the same
Thank
time.
you.
But yeah.
Thank you, staff.
And Don, I see your hand.
This is actually the first time you've asked for volunteers to be on there. You said you've told us who else has volunteered, but this is the first time you've asked. I said, I will volunteer to serve with the police practices and accountability.
I've always asked for volunteers, Don, every time we've had this conversation.
Well, I can
I've
get
asked
this off
who
the
wanted to
argument
be
again.
on which working group. No, because you said I've never done it. And that's a false statement. I've done it every single time we've had this conversation. I've asked who wanted to be on what committee. So I register that you're open to being on, that you want to be on the police practices and accountability working group. Thank you. Anyone else would like to volunteer to be on a working group who isn't currently on a working group? Yeah, Eddie, I feel you. I mean, Louise.
Steve Bischoff has his hand up.
Yes, I see it. Go ahead, Steve.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I would like to be on two groups. I'd like to be on the police practices and accountability group, as well as the health and safety.
Not possible. The way
No?
the working groups are set up, you can only be on one working group. You
Oh.
can get information about the other working groups, but this is something that we discussed at the very beginning when we did this like last year, that for lots of different reasons, both for scheduling and other reasons, we want people to only be on one working group. That doesn't mean you can't learn about what's happening, and also it makes it a lot easier for consistency. So
this may affect your decision, Steve, but with the addition of Dawn on the police practices and accountability working group, it's essentially maxed out for the number of members that can join.
Okay, well, if that's the case, I'll just try to hear about what's going on.
Don, I see your hand is up.
When we first set up these working groups almost 2 years ago, we asked that everybody volunteer to serve on 2 committees.
No, we did not.
All right, I guess I'm a liar again.
I didn't say that. I said you're mistaken. We did not
No.
do that. And that has never been the practice.
Sorry, I'm not going to be interrupted again.
If you want to continue to say things as facts that aren't facts, then you should be willing to be interrupted, because I'm not actually going to let you do that. So if you want to raise a question, you can do that. But what you cannot do is state things as facts that are untrue and then be upset when you're confronted on that. That's not okay.
I'm sorry, if you want to let me finish my sentence and then make a comment, that's one thing. But to interrupt me in the middle of my comment, that's called interruption, and that's what you do on a regular basis, Ms. Smalls, and I object to that on there. And keep in mind, I watch the recordings, I read the transcripts of these meetings. So what I'm saying is not a recollection. It's based on fact. You can disagree with it if you want to, but when you say that I'm saying something that's not true, that's essentially calling me a liar.
You can choose to interpret it that way if you want. Do you have anything else you want to say on this topic? Helen, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that we add the budget group as we go to do this. And then I was going to make a motion to approve this with the addition of the budget committee.
Please do so. And can we reflect that Marisol Cantu has volunteered to be the point person on the budget group, and that right now our tentative agreement is that one person from each working group will be part of the budget working group, to be determined by those working groups who the person is. And is there any unclarity about what I just said?
So just for our notes, I'm going to serve as a clerk right now. I'm gonna try and channel Pam Christian. So I just want to be clear on the motion that I just heard is that there's a motion to approve 5 working groups, 4 of which are listed here: community investment, police practices and accountability, health and safety, community-based solutions, as well as the budget, a budget committee. And that the individuals listed here are those individuals that are agreeing to be on those committees, with the addition of Don Gosney, who would like to be on the police practices and accountability working group. And then for the budget working group, Marisol Cantu will be on that one, with an addition of connection of one member from other working groups.
Right, which will give it 5 members, which is probably the maximum amount that it can have and still be Brown Act compliant.
So I want to bring up something just for clarity. That would mean that the budget group has the individuals who are on the budget working group are serving on 2 committees, 2 working groups. If you actually want the budget working group to be a working group that is comprised of members from other working groups, that means you're gonna have.
Then that is a problem because I don't want to actually establish that precedent. So let's hold that recommendation on the budget in abeyance. Marisol, I'm going to ask that we modify the motion to approve the current working group structure of the 4 working groups that we discussed earlier, and that we revisit how we want to address the issue of the budget. And I see 3 hands. I'm going to call on you guys, but first I want to find out from Marisol if that's agreeable to her.
Can this be not a working group, but I don't know, an advisory group or something? Is there a way that that can also work?
Let me go back and look at the rules, Marisol. I don't want to say no. I mean, all of this was done in part to make sure that we were Brown Act compliant. So let me go back and review the rules about groups and committees and come back and talk to you about that before our next meeting, if that's okay.
Yes, and I just want to make sure that this will then be an agenda item for the next meeting.
Yes,
so it'll be
absolutely.
actionable as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And I apologize that I'm not more clear about that right now. Helen, I see your hand.
Same issue, lowering it.
Okay, no worries. But Helen, before you lower your hand, I made a friendly amendment to your motion. Is that agreeable to you?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Steve, I see your hand is up, and then Joey.
Yeah, I just wanted to say if the names listed now are supposed to be the working groups, I'd like mine associated with health and safety. And I'm wondering if we should maybe not finalize that whole area until the next meeting or something, because I don't know whether people have a chance to think about what working groups they'd like to be on.
So this is not going to be final, like you can't switch it around. We're just approving the groups as the names of the groups. The members of the groups can change, but the actual structure is the name of the groups and what they're each going to do. And that's what the motion is to approve.
Okay.
Joey.
Yeah, so I think you just kind of answered my question, Deborah, but I was kind of losing track to see if everyone has been assigned a committee.
I'm not positive that everyone has volunteered for a group. After this meeting, I'm going to go through the minutes with LaShonda and Guadalupe against our current membership and see what the difference is, and I'll be able to report back on that at our next meeting in January.
Okay, so just a suggestion moving forward for next meeting, if there's anyone that hasn't volunteered for a group and there's someone that wants to take on 2 groups, maybe that's a solution.
No, because as we just discussed, we're trying to avoid having people on multiple groups.
I just want to make mention that the recommended action was to review and discuss, which we're doing, but approve the task force working group structure and membership. So I want to make like that the individuals listed with the addition of Steve Bischoff and the health and safety group and Don Gosney and police practices and accountability is part of the motion, that the members listed are part of the motion as we wrote it.
Yes, including the new additions. And again, agreeing to be on this group now doesn't mean it's written in stone forever. People can change their groups, but this is what it is as of today with the new members that were announced today or volunteered today. Thank you, LaShonda. Do we have any further discussion of this motion, or can we go ahead and vote on it? I don't see any hands raised, so I'm gonna call for a vote.
Did we have a second? I know the Helen made a motion, you did a friendly amendment. Chair Small, was there a second?
Ben Terry, I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Ben. I thought we had one, but thank you, Ben. I appreciate that. So let me be clear before we vote on it, that what we're voting on is the working group structure as listed in the minutes, which is community investment, police practices and accountability, health and safety, and community-based solutions. The members of the working groups are the people who are listed, who volunteered from before, with the addition of the new members who volunteered tonight. That will also be reflected in tonight's minutes, who those additional members are. But when we vote today, you're voting on the previous members plus the new ones with those 4 groups. And we will come back next month and discuss what we want to do about having a budget committee.
And I just want to make sure that the duration of the working groups is also included in that.
Yes, 6 months from when we vote on it. Because I was told they had to be of a limit, a specific time frame.
Right, that's correct.
Deborah, I'm sorry to interrupt, but can we make that 6 months from their first meeting? Because it's going to be a while until we meet.
Sure, I'm fine. Allison, is that okay?
Yeah, I think that'd be fine.
Okay, yes, thank you, Helen.
So we have a motion and a motion by Helen, a second by Ben. We can do roll call. Lupe.
Right, Helen Burks. Helen Burks.
Yes.
Steve Bischoff.
Yes.
Marisol Cantu.
Yes.
Richard Chacon.
Yes.
Luis Chacon.
Yes.
Juan Gosney.
Yes.
Randy Joseph.
Yes.
Kristen Killian Lobos.
Yes.
Marcus Enjasing. Marcus Enjasing. Okay, I'll circle back to him. Joey Schlimmer.
Yes.
Deborah Small.
Yes.
Misha Walker.
Aye.
BK Williams.
Yes.
Then I'll circle back to Marcus Enjasing. Okay, may need to mark his absence. So with that, we have the motion is approved.
Nobody
Thank
asked.
you,
I'm yes
everyone.
too.
I'm sorry?
Is that you, Ben? Should we
Yeah.
miss you?
Yeah, it's all good.
Yes, Ben Terry.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I can't believe we actually completed this item. I want to thank everybody, and I want to especially thank Kristen, because she was the one who insisted that I move it up the agenda so we could actually get it done tonight. So thank you for that push. And the next item on our agenda is, I believe, the report from Lieutenant Lopez that we moved up. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Welcome, Lieutenant Lopez.
Hi,
Good
good
to see
evening.
you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Lieutenant John Lopez. Chief, I see you come on. Did you want to give opening statements?
No, I'm just here to support the task force and yourself in case there are any questions that need to come my way. It's all yours.
Sounds good. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen if I can. Let's see here. Screen 1, screen 2. Let's try screen 1. How about that? Do you guys have a picture of a baseball team, or do you have a picture of a presentation?
The presentation.
How about now?
Still the presentation.
Perfect. Okay, let me get started. Thank you, everybody, for this opportunity. My name is John Lopez. I'm a lieutenant here with the police department. I hope this presentation can bring some insight onto what AB 41 is. It's a short presentation, it's not too long. Please, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I'm kind of learning as I go still. Been doing this since I got this project back in March, but there's a lot of different caveats to it and a lot of agencies. So this is a statewide assembly bill that was passed into law, and it's been already seen by our city council, been approved by our city council, and they had their second reading already as well. Again, so if you have any questions, please let me know and I'm gonna get started. Let's see here. Do you guys have my slideshow or do you have my? I'm trying. Sorry,
We
guys.
can see it, LT.
You're fine. We see the slideshow, the slide you're presenting, and the next slide with your notes, if you're
Gotcha.
okay
I'm
with
gonna change
that.
Yeah, I'm gonna change that up a little bit. My apologies.
You're fine. There you go. We just see the slide you're speaking on now.
Perfect. There we go. All right, so I'm going to give an overview of what we're doing here today. So we'll discuss Assembly Bill 481 and how it defines military equipment. We'll go into the purpose of the equipment and how it's used at the police department. Take a dive look at our equipment inventory so you can see what equipment the Richmond Police Department has, and then how it affects us as a community, and hopefully answer some questions at the end. So what is AB 41? AB 41 was designed to increase community awareness and oversight over the possession and use by local law enforcement agencies of certain types of equipment that AB 41 labels as military equipment. It requires the City Council to provide both authorization and oversight of the equipment used. It also requires an annual report, and the report will summarize things like the equipment usage and updates, our equipment inventory, if there's any updates needed, and then community feedback as well. So the initial approval, City Council reviewed our new policy as it relates to AB 41 and the equipment, and also provided feedback for some changes. We worked with City Council member Jimenez, who also linked us with Jennifer Tu of the American Friends Service Committee to kind of fine tune our policy and procedures. After that, we updated our current RPD policy, completed a new policy for AB 41, and then conducted an inventory of equipment. We produced these documents on our website. We gave them to City Council, which they approved. The documents are on our government website under the police department. And also we have an email link in case you want to email any questions, or it's ab41@richmondpd.net. That comes to me as the AB 41 coordinator for the police department. The police department will also conduct an annual report and present it to the public and also City Council. This annual report will include things like how the equipment is currently being used, maintenance and costs, another equipment inventory update, and then community feedback as well. So the bill classifies the following items as military equipment. As you can see on your screen, the things highlighted in red is what actually doesn't apply to us. It's not applicable to us. But we have things such as our number one, category one, which would be unmanned, remotely piloted, powered aerial and ground vehicles. In other words, robots and drones. Number two is, as you can see, there's mine resistant ambush vehicles, which are called MRAPs. Armored vehicles. This is not applicable to the Richmond Police Department. We don't have any MRAPs here. Category three is called Humvees and vehicles with breaching apparatuses. We don't have those here at the police department. Number four is tracked armored vehicles. We do not have any tracked armored vehicles at the Richmond Police Department. Number five is command and control vehicles that are either built or modified to facilitate the operation, control, and direction of public safety units. We do have a mobile command center, and I'll show you that a little bit later in the slide. Number six is the weaponized aircrafts and vehicles. We do not, the police department does not, possess any of those items. Number seven is battering rams, breaching apparatuses, and explosives that are explosive in natures. These are like our breaching shotguns, which we do have, and I will show you later. Number eight is firearms of the 50 caliber or greater, which we do not have. Number nine, as you can see, is assault weapons less than 50 caliber. Number 10 is any firearms accessory that is designed to launch explosives, projectiles. We don't have any grenade launchers here at the police department. Number 11 is diversionary devices and explosive breaching. We don't have explosive breaching, but we do have diversionary devices. They're commonly known as flashbangs. Number 12 is munitions containing tear gas or OC. 13 is taser, shockwaves, microwave weapons, LRADs. We don't possess those. 14 is kinetic energy weapons. Those are like 40 mic, beanbag shotgun rounds, things of that nature. And then 15 is any other equipment determined by the City Council to require oversight. So what is the purpose of the equipment that we do have? Well, planning for the worst case scenario is something that we have to do because we don't want to be caught unprepared. Our goal and our mission at the police department obviously is to protect the life and the welfare of the community here. While the Richmond Police Department's inventory of its military equipment is varied, The mere possession of the equipment does not warrant its use for every incident. The police department recognizes that critical incidents are unpredictable and can be very dynamic in nature. A variety of military equipment options can greatly assist our incident commanders, our officers, specific units, in bringing those incidents to a swift resolution in a safe manner. The use of military equipment is restricted for use only in certain circumstances or instances, and in some cases only by certain units. So we have units such as our SWAT team, and there's actually items that are classified as military equipment. They're only specific units such as our SWAT team can use. These are some examples of weapons that were seized just this year. I haven't updated this slideshow. This is back from January to August, but this is just a clear example of weapons that we seize on a kind of regular basis here in Richmond, from patrol officers to investigative units. There's a lot of weapons that were recovered. Some are recovered from search warrants, and some are just recovered from traffic stops. High-powered rifle, 10 magazine, just very deadly weapons. These are the 7 categories I was mentioning earlier. These categories range from our robots down to our kinetic energy platforms. Most of the funding has come from the City General Fund. We did have one donation of one of our UAS drone systems. And then this is also a list of when we acquired some of this stuff. So I'm gonna start with, we're gonna go through the items that we do have. There are some descriptions of those items. Please, if you have any questions, please let me know. We're gonna start with our robot. This resource is used during high-risk incidents such as warrant service, barricaded subjects, hostage negotiations, rescue operations. We like to use this item during those high-risk situations where we can throw a robot in, get eyes inside of a building or an objective, and we don't put anybody at risk. We have one robot so far, and only our SWAT team utilizes this robot. This robot's been with our police department before I joined the SWAT team back in 2009, so it's quite dated, but we still use it and it's still useful. Next to that, you see is our UAS system, our unmanned aircraft systems. They support our first responders in any hazardous incident, which could benefit from an aerial perspective. These uses could include search and rescue, barricaded suspects, or high-risk tactical operations, disaster response, and video and photos of crime scenes. So what happens is when we use a UAS, it's typically is going to be approved by a manager. So the manager or supervisor approving any flight mission, UAS operators and observers will consider the protection of the individual's civil rights and the reasonable expectation of privacy as a key component of any decision before any decision being made about using a UAS. We have 8 of those currently right now, and they're different types, different sizes for different types of missions. Here's a mobile command center that I mentioned earlier. Our mobile command center is completely self-contained command post designed to provide incident commanders with a mobile base of operation. Our MCC is also used as a backup dispatch center in case the dispatch center ever goes down, runs out of electricity power. We can use it as a mobile dispatch center. We've used it for community events such as Cinco de Mayo and Juneteenth, so community members can take a look at it, go inside, kind of see what we use it for. We typically on our tactical teams, we'll bring this out, and this will be our command post staging area. Inside you'll find there's clipboards, there's computer systems, there's telephones, everything that we need for a tactical situation or a critical incident. So category 7 is our breaching shotguns and projectiles. We use these breaching shotguns. We have 2 of these items within our police department. This is another item that's only used by our SWAT team. Tactical breaching shotguns are used to breach doors, gates, security screens, things with locking mechanisms. The projectiles that you see that are pictured there as well, those are fragment rounds. So what happens is when a SWAT team member who has been trained and has the training to use the breaching shotgun, they'll go up to a door, they'll use the breaching shotgun on the locking mechanism. These fragment rounds will literally disperse into powder after initial contact with the locking mechanism. Forces the door open and allows entry to for the team members. Category 9 is our department patrol rifles. The police rifle is a gas-operated, shoulder-fired, semi-automatic rifle based on the Colt M16 or the AR-15 style platforms, or the platform of families. The patrol rifle discharges 1 round per press, so it means every time you press the trigger, only 1 round comes out. We don't have any automatics. The patrol rifle discharges 1 round per press of the trigger and has many different advantages in comparison with officer standard duty weapons. Some of the advantages are the accuracy and effective range, which is superior to our firearms that we carry on our duty belts, greater stopping power compared to handguns, and the ability to penetrate soft body armor. The patrol rifle is the only weapon that we have that is capable of defeating soft body armor. Next is our diversionary devices, if I can say that correctly. Commonly referred to as a flashbang, excuse me. Generally, flash sound diversion devices may be considered whenever the use of less lethal diversion would help facilitate entry, enabling arrest, and potentially reducing the risk of injury by disorientation of the potentially dangerous suspect and or animals. So a lot of times we'll use these on entries. It's used for diversion only. Sometimes we use them in the backyard, right below a window, or we use it upon entry of a house. And then also only specifically trained operators are allowed to use, that have gone to training for diversion devices, are allowed to use flashbangs.
Part of my interruption, I just wanted to check, do you want questions during or at the end? Because I heard you mention if there were questions.
It would probably be better if we do it at the end.
Okay,
and
I'll
that
try
way-
to keep the slides in mind that we'll need to refer back to.
I can
Okay,
always go
thanks.
back to, and that helps out.
Cool.
As well.
Thank you.
Next is the overmatch. Chemical agents. Chemical agents and chemical agent delivery devices. Compound devices, delivery systems utilized by the SWAT team and members of the SRT team. The deployment of chemical agents is a tactical option that may be selected with the goal of protecting life and property and restoration of order. It is considered a use of force option and consistent with RPD use of force policy. Chemical agents may be used for crowd control, crowd dispersal, or against barricaded suspects in certain circumstances. Only the patrol sergeant, incident commander, or crisis response unit commander may authorize the use. When practical, we call the fire department first and have them on scene, call medical as well, have them on scene. There are very specific, I went too fast there. Sorry. There are very specific times when we can use our chemical agents. And then our kinetic energy projectiles and chemical agents for crowd control purposes, so only deployed by officers who have received post training. So it's very specific on who can use chemical agents in our impact munitions. So beanbag shotguns, kinetic energies, less lethal 40 millimeter launchers. These are impact weapons. So we currently have 11 beanbag shotguns within the department. The beanbag shotguns are used as a less lethal device in case we need to potentially bring a situation to a peaceful resolution. Some of the circumstances where we can use our kinetic energy devices are the suspect is armed with a weapon and in tactical circumstances allow for a safe application for approved munitions, such as the 40 millimeter or the direct impact. The suspect has made credible threats to harm himself. The suspect is engaged in a behavior or is throwing rocks, bottles, or other dangerous projectiles at people. There is probable cause to believe that the suspect has already committed a crime of violence and is refusing to comply with lawful orders. And it's all stated within our policy as well. There are many items that are deemed to be military equipment per AB 41, and they are in fact already employed by the Richmond Police Department and law enforcement agencies across the country in order to specifically reduce the risk to community members. The police department is committed to using the most up-to-date tools and equipment to safeguard our community. So I know some of this was pretty fast. I do want to be able to take questions, and I didn't mean to speed through it, but sometimes I talk fast. But if you have any questions, please let me know. We do have an email like I mentioned earlier. It's at ab41@richmondpd.net. I am the AB40 Waiting Coordinator. My email is jlopez@richmondpd.net. And I'll take questions if you guys have any. Oops. See here, stop share. Okay.
Thank you, Lieutenant Lopez. And I see we do have questions from Helen, Kristen, and then Don. Take them in that order.
Thank you. I have questions on 3 slides. I'll make them fast.
Sure.
The first one is on the mobile command unit. And I'm curious because most of what I was hearing is that these are tools that are only used in certain types of circumstances. So I was surprised to hear that that was used for community events. Can you talk about what the purpose is of bringing that specific equipment to community events?
Sure. So it's been, we used to have, before COVID, we had Juneteenth and Cinco de Mayo, and it was used just as a way so the community members could see some of the equipment, the vehicles that we have. We have our motorcycles, our traffic unit would be out there, our dirt bikes would be out there. And then we also put out our mobile command center. It was just a way to show the public kind of the equipment that we had before AB 41 came out and before COVID, when we had events. Community members could go inside, look around, ask questions about the vehicles. It was more for a way for the community to see the equipment that we had at the time.
Got it. Okay, I guess my brief response to that to be due to the kind of the spirit of the law with this, I wonder if the continued use of it for that purpose is appropriate. Specifically, if we're looking at military grade equipment and we're looking at what its purpose is, if it's reassuring to community in that space or not. But that's just a thought. The next question was about the patrol rifles. Could you pull up that slide?
I don't know if I can put it up on here. Do you want to put it on here?
Oh. Yeah.
Sure, 1 second.
I was trying to take it in fast and
No, it's fine.
because I had a question about
Do you have a baseball team or do you have a?
I've got it. You're on the right one.
All right.
Can you just explain the usage of that one again for me briefly? Like when that one's used versus other firearms, just clarifying that.
Sure. So we have specific times that we can actually use the patrol rifle. It's one of those items that was gone over with council members and with community activists as well. So specific times is officers may use rifles in the following situations. When there is an objectively reasonable anticipation of an armed encounter, when officers faced with a situation that may require the delivery of accurate and effective fire at long range, situations where an officer reasonably expects the need to meet or exceed a suspect's firepower, when an officer reasonably believes that there may be a need to deliver fire on a barricaded suspect or a suspect with a hostage, when an officer reasonably believes that the suspect may be wearing body armor, when authorized or requested by a supervisor, when needed to euthanize an animal. And those are the specific times we can use.
Okay, got it. And then the last one was about the chemical agents slide.
Oops, I shouldn't have done that. 1 second. Chemical agents.
You might be able to answer without the slide.
Sure.
It's really just a question of what are the specific chemical agents that we have?
So typically we have the specific ones are OC and CN and CS gases.
Okay. And can you say that they stand for?
Oh, that's okay. So OC is could be O. Yeah, O. It's a long word. So give me a second here. I will find it for you.
Sorry, I'm a chemistry teacher, so I know like if you say the chemicals, I've got a better understanding than the
No, that's a
I
completely.
apologize.
No. Trying to find it on my list here. So I can, but I don't have it in front of me because it's like I said, it's a long word, and the CN is also the long word. What I can do is I can get it back to you tonight, even just those chemicals if you like.
That'd be great. I think what I'd just love to have. Oh, thank you, Ben. I see you putting it in the chat.
Ben, thank you.
I'm just thinking about, because depending on which chemical agents they are, the long-lasting impacts on health, of course, are different, as well as like their persistence in different environments is different. So that's the realm of questions of why I asked that. I'm also just having recollection of when we had a basketball game a few years ago, and it wasn't any of these, but it was pepper spray that was unloaded in the eyes of teenagers that had gotten in a fight. It was at Richmond High, the Kennedy and Richmond High fight. And the impacts that it had on some of the young people who needed to go to the hospital. And that was for the minor chemicals. So that's some of the motivation behind that question. Thank you.
Next, I see Kristen.
Yeah, first off, I wanted to thank you and the department, excuse my voice, I'm getting over a bad cold, for coming tonight and doing this presentation and making sure more community got to see this presentation. I saw the first one at City Hall months ago, and I'm grateful that you made sure that more people got to see it because that wasn't very well attended. My question is about jurisdiction, specifically, other city departments in the East Bay and our sheriff department here in Contra Costa, would they be able to bring or use equipment that's not used in Richmond?
So great question. That was one of the areas that we went over a couple times. So as it specifically relates to our policy, in our policy, it's 707.6. It states that coordination with other jurisdictions, military equipment used by a member of this jurisdiction shall be approved for use in accordance with the department policy. Military equipment used by other jurisdictions that are providing mutual aid to this jurisdiction shall comply with their respective military use equipment use policies in rendering that mutual aid. So that's our specific policy as it relates to that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there any way to make sure that that is actually what happens?
So it's incumbent upon us as administrators, me being, so I don't think I introduced myself either. So I'm also in charge of our SWAT team, our tactical response team, and I'm a manager over those different tactical teams. So whenever a critical incident was to happen, where we're going to need mutual aid, it's got to meet the approval of the incident commander, tactical commanders, and then of course our captains and our chiefs. So it's very important that these policies, that the administration knows the policies and that we adhere to the policies as they are.
Next person, Don Gosney.
Thank you, Lieutenant Lopez, for this presentation. It's been very informative. Like a lot of the other people here, I watched the presentation of the city council meeting, but the benefit of this presentation is we can ask questions and you can actually respond.
Yes,
that's not an option for us at city council. So it's been a great benefit. But my main question has to do with what are typically referred to as rubber bullets. It's a series of questions, but do we use rubber bullets in Richmond?
We use, I wouldn't call them rubber bullets. We use kinetic energy munitions, which are, depends on what you're referring to as a rubber bullet, are munitions that are kinetic energy devices. They could look like a rubber bullet, but it's not what it's called. There are specific rubber bullets. Our police department does not use them, but we do use impact munitions.
Okay. The reason I'm bringing this up is that typically what is referred to as rubber bullets they're not very rubbery. They're pretty hard. And but if I'm not mistaken, we are still being sued by a member of the media that alleged that she was shot point blank by a Richmond police officer helping out in Oakland. And the photographs of the bruise on her thigh was massive. It had been 10 or 12 inches long and wide. And I mean, that was kind of scary that first off, they'd be shooting somebody that was clearly wearing a vest that said media on there, but you can do a lot of damage. It can be deadly if shot in the wrong place. And so I actually discussed this with Chief French at the time about the policy about using rubber bullets, but the way you're describing it is that we don't really use those kinds of rubber bullets. So it begs the question, what was this member of the media shot with that could do that kind of damage? I just don't know.
I can't speak to the specifics of that incident. I actually don't know the circumstances or the background behind that incident. But again, it depends on what you're classifying as a rubber bullet. We use kinetic munitions, which could be called rubber bullets by someone who's not maybe has the information to know what the differences are. These, and I got to be very specific here. These resources that we have, they're dangerous and they can be very dangerous and so we have to be very specific on who's getting trained with it and who's utilizing these types of devices when it's needed. I can't comment on that past incident only because I don't have the background or the knowledge of it, But we do have kinetic energy munitions in our department.
But these rubber tipped bullets, they're soft tipped. How soft are they really? I mean, if you're shot, say at 25 feet, is going to put you on the ground. Are they potentially deadly?
They can be deadly if they're shot in the wrong areas. So that's why training is needed. I don't want to be shot with a kinetic energy munition. It's going to hurt. It's a pain compliance technique. So that's what they're made for. But you know, with any resources or any kind of devices that we use, that we have here at the police department, you have to be trained and you have to know what the limitations are of each resource that we have.
Just so people understand, these are shot from the 37 and 40 millimeter grenade launchers attached to our weapons. So they're not exactly a bullet, they're a projectile.
Correct.
Thank you very much, sir.
Yes, sir.
BK, I'm sorry, you're next.
No, thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Lieutenant, for the presentation. It was a good read, informative. I just have two questions. The first is your presentation mentions reports that have to be filed. Is there some way that we can get a report on the usage of what you've actually used? It seems like you have to create those. So that's some information I'd like to see if possible. The second is maybe more of a comment, but since this is military equipment, I'm questioning maybe the use of or taking a military van or mobile command unit into public spaces where there are children and other community members. I appreciate seeing police officers at community events. I'm not so sure how I feel. And also your document says that the use of military equipment is restricted for use only in certain instances and in some cases by certain units. So I'm just wondering about the justification of taking this mobile military unit into a public setting and on display and what your thoughts are on that. Thank you.
Sure. Just the first half of the question was reports and documentation. So as I mentioned, annually, we have to produce the stats, and when we used our quote unquote military equipment, when we use them, how we use them, the documentation of that. So that's going to come out on an annual basis, and that's going to be presented to the community and then also to the city council as well for them to review as an oversight committee. And then secondly, so the mobile command center we use at community events, this is prior to AB 41, and this was prior to COVID. Again, I think and I don't want to speak for any of our command staff, but the events were always well attended, excuse me. And it was just another way for us to show some of the equipment that we had. We also brought out, our Camaros, a Chevy Camaro that we have, and some of the other vehicles and those types. The mobile command center itself, it's big, it looks like a big RV. It's got the black and white insignia and then the police lights as well. So it was more of a way for us to show the community kind of the equipment that we possess.
Just to piggyback on that, Lieutenant Lopez, it's also part of the larger picture of the National Incident Management System, which is a nationally recognized system of properly preparing for public safety and when there's large gatherings and large settings. So the National Incident Command Center requires a command post, and the command post is the location that in the event something were to happen, it could be an earthquake. Chevron could have a massive event in the middle of Juneteenth, for example, or there could be an active shooter or something of that nature. The proper emergency management planning for a citywide perspective requires an incident command post to be set up, in which case the command van, that command trailer, turns into that command post for all of first responders to kind of start reporting to and working out of. So that's the primary underlining reason why we deploy that when we have large gatherings, such as some of these events that Lieutenant Lopez has mentioned. In the meantime, it turns into sort of a community engagement opportunity in the process while it's not being used as a command center. to really engage the public. Kids get a lot of pictures out of there. Parents get a lot of pictures with their families in there, and it ends up being a great conversation piece almost every time that it's out. But the underlining issue, it's really part of that national critical incident command process for public safety planning on large gatherings.
So just to follow up to that, when it is at a community event, is it ready for use at that event, or is it just on display at that moment?
No, it's ready for use. Yeah, it's literally
Okay.
just it's got communications capability. Like we could put a dispatch center in there if we needed to have like immediate dispatch capabilities, extra radios to hand out to firefighters and EMS and other police officers so that we can all stay in communication with each other. It kind of brings our resources to ground zero, for lack of a better word, so that we can properly, as a public safety entity, not just police department, several resources all be able to come together and kind of operate out of one place. And it is capable of that in those moments.
Is that it for you, BK?
Thank you.
Okay, Joey Schlemmer, you're up.
Yeah, I'm glad that Chief Simmons spoke up and kind of gave a little bit of a different perspective on what the mobile command center is used for. As someone that was in charge of traffic and special events for many, many years, I can tell you that the mobile command center was utilized as a command post. It was utilized as community engagement. I can't ever remember an adverse interaction with anyone during any of the events, whether it was the 3rd of July fireworks, whether it was Cinco de Mayo, whether it was Juneteenth. It's also utilized as a focal point for the community if they need help from the police for a variety of different reasons. That's where we're located. It was also utilized for missing children and the like. So it's really, in my opinion, the furthest thing from a piece of military equipment. Unfortunately, it falls under the focal point of this legislation. So that's really all I really wanted to put into perspective for this thing. It was utilized in many events, and like I said, never an adverse thing. And I think we're getting away. I think some folks may be getting away from how we're trying to interact with the community in a positive manner. And the mobile command center, for a lack of a better term, wore quite a few hats in and of itself. I also just want to say, in response to some of the questions and comments that Dawn made, I'm really kind of disappointed that Dawn wanted to ask police personnel questions about pending litigation. The munitions that the police department uses are what they are, and they're used only under certain circumstances, and they're only used under certain distances, and in only certain portions of the body. Things happen, and that's why they're described as less lethal, because yes, under some circumstances, it can be fatal. It's not the intention of the police department to use less lethal munitions to maim or to unfortunately have a fatal incident. But those things across the country have happened, and that's why they're labeled as less lethal. So I wish Dawn, as much as I like Dawn, would really kind of think about some of the questions that he poses to the police personnel, especially when there's pending litigation.
You have anything else, Joey?
No, that's it. Thank you, Deborah.
Then Terrio, you're next.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Lieutenant, for your presentation you put before council. So it's been very informative, and I think it's really good for the public. One, I think the best thing that's unfortunate that we have to put that out there, but it's showing all the different various weapons that police officers in Richmond come across. It's very important. I think a lot of people are kind of in a fog about the type of weaponry that is out there. And it's good to show that and be transparent about what the things that we come across, because it is, quite frankly, a lot. I can tell you, I think it was Helen asked earlier, but just for the public's perspective, I mean, just last night we had a man with a gun call that I was on where we had, deployed our patrol rifle, and it ended up being someone that didn't have a firearm, but I mean, they get utilized only for really high intensity type of calls. And it's important because, unfortunately, the type of hardware that is out there in our streets, unfortunately, is very deadly and very serious. And it's good to have that available to protect the public. And then on the mobile command center, I mean, I can tell you, someone who's in the military, there's a lot of equipment that's put under this bill that might be called military equipment, but it's the state of California calling it military equipment. Doesn't necessarily mean it's actually military equipment, because there's a lot of these things that I never saw in the military, or they don't exist in the military. The mobile command center is a designation that falls under that equipment list. But in the past, this thing was been displayed and been out in the public, and that's a good piece for transparency for people to see. It was before this bill that people could see the type of equipment they have. And then most importantly, the mobile command center is a converted fire truck. So unless we're going to start getting rid of fire trucks throughout the city, I think people need to understand, like, it was not designed originally for some type of nefarious purpose. It's actually a converted fire vehicle, and that just happens to be utilized as a mobile command center. And it's extremely important for a multitude of reasons that I won't repeat, but already talked about by Lieutenant Lopez and Captain Simmons. That's very important for public safety. And it's good. It's a good thing that people see that equipment and that they can talk and ask questions about it, because then that removes the shroud, so to speak, to the public, and that's important. So I think it's a good thing that it's out there and people see it. So it's not something that's like covered in darkness. Thank you.
Okay. Tamisha, you're next.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Lieutenant, for the presentation. I do have 3 questions, and for the most part is because I've been through a process similar to this, and I think it's important some things are important to clarify for the public, and I didn't hear it initially, and maybe I missed it, and forgive me if I did. What is the difference between military surplus and military issue? So I guess that's what's the difference between military surplus and military issue? And then we know that a lot has been reclassified under this new bill, and yeah, and I have a follow-up question, but I would like you to answer those first, just for clarification for the public who might not know the difference.
Sure. So my understanding, so the military surplus is going to be items that were actually in the military, as Ben was talking about, items that were in the military, used by the military, commonly used by the military, that are now either given to law enforcement agencies who qualify or are just there. So as far as our police department is concerned, we have 2 items that came from the military, that is military, I would call military surplus. Those 2 items have never been deployed by the police department. It's called a 1033 program that we signed up for. I want to say it's been now 15, 16 years ago. We signed up for this program. We are now in the process of removing ourselves from this program and trying to give one is a handgun, the other one is a small rifle. Again, never been used by us, never been deployed by us, never been out of our police department, other than when we moved from 401 27th Street to 1701 Regatta. So other than those 2 items that were actually come from the military, all of our equipment is either brand new or it's never been a military issued equipment, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like you explained the difference between like military surplus is what a police department would receive from the military, anything from like military, and then military issue could just, I mean, a civilian could purchase something that could be deemed as military issue, right?
Yeah, I mean, again, it goes by your definition. I mean, military issue for me is if you're in the military and they issued you a rifle or whatever they issued, it could be a canteen. For like us, if you get issued a handgun, it's a department issued handgun. So that's kind of how it depends on how you want to classify or kind of define those two words.
And then the last question, I know, like due to this bill, a lot of things were reclassified and you all now are doing the inventory, and I'm grateful for these public presentations. And then I'm just wondering, you know, now with all of this being classified as military weapons or whatever, if the city was to do a ban on using the use of military weapons in the city of Richmond, would that eliminate the department's ability to use any of these weapons?
Yes, that's correct. So that's why we needed to present this first as an oversight for the city council and for them to approve our policy. If this wasn't approved, then exactly what you said, we wouldn't be able to use this equipment. I gotta make it pretty clear from my standpoint as a lieutenant here at the police department and being a SWAT operator since 2009. And this, besides even outside the fact, the equipment that we have, some of it's been deemed as military equipment. It's very important, very crucial for the safety of this community. We would be doing a disservice to the community had we not had the equipment that was listed here. We are not trying to go above and beyond. In fact, I believe there's certain equipment that we do not have that's very crucial for our community. If I'm trying to safeguard community members, armored vehicles are very important. Do they have to look militaristic? Not at all. You know, you can make a ballistic vehicle look like a painter's van. You can make it look like a rescue vehicle. There's lots of different types of ways to get away from the militaristic look. But those are some needs that our community, I think we should have, and that the police department should be utilizing. We don't right now at the moment. The equipment that we do have, it's very much needed, and it would be it would go against the safeguarding our community if we didn't have some of this equipment. Just in case for that time when you know, sometimes violence does wreak havoc in the city of Richmond, and sometimes there are situations that community members are put at risk, and it's important to have the resources and the necessary tools in order to overcome those inherently dangerous situations.
Thank you, Lieutenant, for answering all those questions. And I also want to thank you for pointing out that the command vehicle was you said a fire truck, because I definitely saw a fire truck, right? I was like, wait a minute, that the command center was a fire truck and not like a tank, which would make me a little more concerned to see on the streets, is a tank versus a fire truck that has been refashioned to be a command center in the case of any emergencies. And just to clarify for everybody, I'm no way right now tonight on this in this meeting for any bans. Thank you.
Okay, Joey, I see your hand up again.
Yeah, so I just want to clarify a couple of things. So the mobile command center was custom built by a company in Florida that primarily builds fire trucks. So this wasn't a decommissioned fire truck that was retrofitted into a mobile command center. So I believe in Chief Simmons and Lieutenant Lopez can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe, if I remember correctly, the mobile command center was purchased with Homeland Security funding, as was I believe our boat and the fire department's boat that they purchased in recent years. I will say that a lot of the weaponry that any police department has, for the most part, really is in response to a lot of really unfortunate situations that have occurred over the years. And one of the most shocking incidents, for those that may or may not remember, was the North Hollywood shootout in Los Angeles, which happened in 1997. The Los Angeles Police Department, which is probably one of the largest police departments in California, was outgunned that day because of two individuals that were wrapped in body armor and possessed high-powered AK-47 rifles. So those things happen. People that, unfortunately, that the Richmond Police Department interact with and are confronted with have these same high-powered weaponry. And unfortunately, that's why some of these things come about. It's not just because the police department wants to have a lot of fun little military toys. It's because they need to have the tools to go out and do the job safely and protect not only the police department personnel, but the community at large. So, like I said, if anybody wants to do a little Google search, go ahead and take a look at some of the video footage from the North Hollywood shootout, and you'll see why some of these things come about.
Does anyone else have any questions of Lieutenant Lopez?
Again, thank you for your time. I appreciate you have any questions, maybe it comes up later on. You can always reach me at ab481@richmondpd.net if it's related to AB481 questions. Outside that, my email is jlopez@richmondpd.net. I'm currently in charge of our investigations bureau here at the police department. And thank you again for your time.
Chair Small, do you want to invite public comment before Lieutenant Lopez?
Yes, I do. I was about to do that,
Okay,
but
great.
I actually had one quick question I wanted to ask him before I did that. So I just wanted to make sure that all the other task force members had asked their questions before I posed mine. So my question is pretty simple. You know, cities around the country have stockpiled a lot of various equipment in order to be prepared for emergencies, to deal with the proliferation of high-powered weapons that are out there, et cetera. And yet I can't help, when I'm listening to this, think about the situation in Uvalde, Texas, where the public was told that getting all of this equipment was there to be used for an emergency to keep the community safe, et cetera. And Uvalde wasn't the only school shooting situation where police officers had specialized equipment that they actually didn't use. So I'm just curious, what's your view about that, Lieutenant Lopez? Has there ever been a situation in Richmond where officers were facing a situation like that, where equipment was there, but it wasn't actually utilized in a way that ultimately protected public safety?
First on Uvalde shooting, there are, and I don't like to Monday morning quarterback anybody on any situation, but there's a lot of things that went wrong, and first came from the command, who was on scene making decisions that needed to make decisions at the time. So with that, we go into situations where they're inherently going to be dangerous, and we know that going into it. We signed up for this job. That is our job to do, and those are the tasks. When people's lives are put at risk, it is our job to go in there, regardless of how we feel about ourselves. It's called bravery, and you know, you need that. You need operators that understand that. When I say operators, I'm talking about officers that understand that and doing the job for the right reason. So, you know, when we're talking about hiring, we're talking about tactics, we're talking about training, this type of mentality is very important. We have to have a mentality of, we are to serve the public, and then also be those guardians for the public when it's needed, right? Because that's our job, and we're the ones that are being called, and we're the ones that are put in that situation. So it's very, very specific, very important that our officers, they get the training that's needed, they get the equipment that's needed. So when the time comes, God forbid, they're put in a situation where they know what to do, and they have the resources and tools in order to accomplish the mission in a successful way. Going back to an incident here in Richmond, I want to knock on wood. I can't think of an incident that I can give you where we had equipment and we didn't put it to use. There's always a way we could do something better when we do these operations. I approve all of our SWAT operations throughout the year. A lot of it's pre-planned search warrants, high-risk search warrants, high-risk takedowns, apprehensions on very dangerous individuals. Those are the ones that are approved. I try to utilize and make sure that we utilize all the resources and equipment that we have to have a successful mission. That's the point of our resources. That's the point of our tools, is to one, we got to make sure that the community is safe, make sure that the suspect or the subject or whoever's involved, all that are involved are safe, and then our officers making sure that they're safe. And so when we're given these resources and these tools, it's important the training's there. It's important that that mentality is there for our team leaders and for our supervisors and for administration. I can't give you a specific time where we had equipment and we didn't use it, but there's always ways we can do better on every single mission or operation that we have.
I appreciate that, Lieutenant Lopez. And my final question is, what is the RPD's position on no-knock warrants?
Great question. So I follow the National Tactical Officers Association, NTOA. You can find them on their website, ntoa.org. They have a huge article on no-knock warrants. Assistant Chief Tyrona, before he left, we talked about it. We had a conversation about it. And these are one of these conversations when it comes to the SWAT team that we need to be on the same page about, to make sure that we're safeguarding the community. The police department, we do not do no-knock warrants. We haven't done no-knock warrants, at least not under my command that I can recall, that I can remember. Those no-knock warrants you're talking about, if I just went down to a training and I was talking to San Diego and LAPD commanders, tactical commanders, and they handle 200 to 300 tactical operations a year. Large agencies, a lot of stuff going on down there. And you're talking about maybe once, twice a year that they'll utilize a no-knock warrant for very, very specific reasons. No-knock warrants are inherently dangerous for both the public and for the officers. And a lot of times our tactics are really moving away from any type of no-knock warrant at all. A lot of times our tactics are moving towards a surround and call out. So if we're doing a search warrant and we're doing a surround and call out, what that means is we literally surround an area with a whole bunch of police, put our lights on, and we'll go through our PA system and we'll announce our presence and tell the individuals that are inside the house to come out. But that's one specific tactic. There's lots of different tactics that we can use that that we could talk about. But as far as no-knock warrants, my personal opinion as a commander, I believe it's very unsafe, and it would have to be very, the reason would have to be very specific, and for me to justify why we would do a no-knock warrant. It's just not utilized here in Richmond.
Thank you very much, Lieutenant Lopez. I appreciate that. Joey, I see your hand. Do you have an additional question?
Well, excuse me, I'm sorry. Before we continue, it is 7:29.
Oh my gosh, I had no idea it was that late.
Such a rich conversation. We need to extend the meeting. We do need to hear from public speakers and then go back to the last item. And
yes,
see if
so
there's
I
public
need a
speakers also.
motion to extend the meeting until at least for 15 minutes so we can complete these two items that are still outstanding.
I'll make a
Kristen,
motion.
are you raising your hand to make the motion? You did that, Ben? Was that you?
Yeah, I'm trying to get
Okay.
get ahead of
Can
it
I
for you.
get- Is
I'd
that
like to
you,
second.
Joey, seconding? Okay, great. Can we take a quick vote on that, please? The motion to extend the meeting for 15 minutes, is that right, Ben?
Yes, yeah, motion to extend
Okay.
15 minutes.
Helen Burks,
Yes.
Steve Bischoff,
Yes.
Marisol Ganfo,
Yes.
Eddie Chacon,
Yes.
Luis Chacon,
Yes.
Don Gosney,
Yes.
Randy Joseph,
Yes.
Kristen Killian-Lobos,
Yes.
Joey Schlemmer,
Yes.
Deborah Small.
Yes.
I think I may have missed Marcus Ingesing. Is he still here?
I think he left.
He just signed off.
He just signed off.
All right. Ben Terrio,
Yes.
Joe Walker,
Aye.
and BK Williams.
Abstain.
Okay. So the motion passes with one abstention.
Okay, so it's 7:31. We've got 14 minutes left. Joey, is your question urgent?
Yeah, I just want to make a comment to the question that you asked Lieutenant Lopez. So in the spirit of Andre Soto, I'm going to give a little bit of history.
Can you do that very quickly? Because we've got a short amount of time. Okay,
Yeah,
good.
I can. So we're coming up on the 30th anniversary of the killing of Officer David Haynes and Leonard Garcia in December of 1992. So you asked about a situation where weapons were, whether the police department had weapons and they weren't used. I'll turn that around just slightly. The suspect that killed those two officers in December of 1992 was armed with a .30 caliber carbine rifle. And one of the reasons why other officers didn't go in and potentially save those two officers who died at the scene was because they weren't armed with the correct tools and didn't have the correct tactics and didn't have the correct supervision on scene. So there have been situations in the city of Richmond where we've had officers shot on high-risk entries and on search warrants. Fortunately, and Lieutenant Lopez can maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but I think, thank God, that hasn't happened probably in the last 25 or 30 years, but it has. And like I said, we had two officers that were killed in December of 1992.
So thank you, Joey. That was actually not responsive to the question that I raised, but that's okay. We will now go to public comments. Are there any public comments on the report that we just received from Lieutenant Lopez on military equipment?
There are no hands raised.
Okay, well, I want to go back to the previous item because we did not ask for public comment on the issue related to the task force working groups.
Chair Small, really quickly, I'm sorry, are we done with this item? Is that this item concluded since there's no?
Yes, it's concluded
Okay.
since there's no public comment.
Right.
I'm
Thank
sorry.
you, Lieutenant Lopez. I just wanted to thank him for his time.
Oh yeah, thank you very much.
He can possibly go to sleep if he's been working all day.
Great
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
presentation too. Thank you
Thank
very
you,
much.
Lieutenant, or Assistant Chief Simmons. I'm gonna get it right. Thank you too.
Thank you both for attending tonight. Appreciate you. So now can I go forward? LaShonda, I just want to see if
Yes,
there
ma'am.
were any
Yes.
public comments. No, it's okay. It's all good. On the, it's my bad because I forgot to ask for public comments on the item related to the task force working groups. So I'm inviting any public comment for anyone who's still here who wants to comment on that item.
There are no hands raised for this.
Okay. I don't know that we actually have a sufficient amount of time to move forward with the other items on our agenda. And really the extension was so that we could complete these two items. So I'm not gonna press it by trying to bring in another agenda item at this point. I just wanna make the point though to everyone that we agreed at the last meeting that we would not have a meeting in December. So our next scheduled task force meeting is not until January. Before we go, I'd like to know if there is anyone from the group who would like to volunteer to give the task force report to City Council in January, because that will happen before our next task force meeting.
I'll do it, Chair.
Ben?
Sure.
Is that you? Okay, great. Thank you. And if you need any assistance or support, I am here. All you have to do is email me, you know, if you need additional, no, seriously.
I will, believe me.
Okay, good. No,
Stress stuff,
really.
that'll happen.
So I'll help you put it together if you need that. And if something comes up, I was going to do it if no one volunteered, but I don't want to always be the one speaking on behalf of the task force. So I appreciate you volunteering, Ben.
No problem.
Chair
All
Small,
right,
I am confirming that there is no update to City Council in December. We're just doing an update, the task force is doing an update only in January?
Yes, that's what I
Okay,
communicated
thank you.
to City Council. Marisol, I see your hand.
Thank you. I just wanted to see if the outstanding agenda items will be moved to the January meeting.
Yes, everything that wasn't addressed tonight will get placed on the agenda for our next meeting in January. And I just want to make the point that even though we're not having a task force meeting in December, doesn't mean that the working groups cannot meet in December. Each working group has to set up their own meeting time. And so my suggestion and encouragement is that at minimum, you guys arrange a call so that you can decide when you're going to meet, and you can let us know at the January meeting when the working groups are going to be meeting. And I want to wish everybody a happy holiday season and hope that you all stay healthy and enjoy time with your family. And here's hoping that 2023 is better than 2022. Thanks, everybody. Also, I just want to express my appreciation to the task force members for being here, for showing up every month, you know, for continuing to stay focused on the work. You know, governing is hard work. It's not glamorous. You know, working on developing programs and serving people is hard, arduous, grunt work. And, you know, and we're all doing it as volunteers. So I just really want to say how much I appreciate it. And I'm hoping that we can go into 23 with the same level of commitment that we showed through 22 and make sure that we get CCRP up and running next year. Anybody else? We've got 2 minutes if anybody has anything else they want to say.
Thank you all. We appreciate you.
Thank you, LaShonda,
Oh, thank you.
Guadalupe, Allison, Stephanie, all the staff for all your hard work. Seriously appreciate you all. Thank you.
We thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
All right, have a
Looking
great
Thanks,
night.
everyone. Happy holidays.
See you all in 2023. Bye.
Good night.